Hey guys, Al here, Vitalize Seed. So I posted an article the other day about nutrient stratification, and I thought it would be helpful to do a video on it. What does that mean? What can we? How can we use systems like the Vitalize 1-2 systems and cover crops to help to eliminate that? So one of the things that I found interesting is I wanted to start off with the definition. So nutrient stratification commonly refers to the distribution of nutrients that is non-uniform. Often this term is used after broadcasting of fertilizer. So specifically phosphorus and potassium, those are the two big macronutrients that we'll talk about. They are very immobile in the soil, and even if they do move, they tend to get bound up, especially phosphorus. So even if it is moving, I've heard some estimations, it moves 1/4 of an inch per year, but that doesn't mean that it's available. It still needs to become available through biological systems that are going to solubilize that nutrient so that it can be plant assimilable or in a soil solution form to where the plants can uptake it. So without that, what we end up with is, yes, it might be moving, but it's not going to be available because it's going to be bound to things like calcium, magnesium, aluminum, etc., depending on the pH in the soil environment. Another quick definition is stratified soils are those that are characterized by abrupt porosity changes at various steps within the potential active root zone. So again, this is why at Vitalize Seed, whether you're a gardener, a farmer, a food plotter, we heavily focus on pH and base saturations because we want to make sure that the chemical side of the soil is also adequate in order to make sure that that balance is right so we get that good porosity and availability for those plants to maximize photosynthetic capture when they are growing, and also why we want to do a heavy focus on super diverse root systems like you have in our Nitro Boost as well as our Carbon Load, so that we are creating that biological aggregation or biological root structure, not just in the first inch or two, but all the way down through the root zone, or also known as the rhizosphere. So this is the study that I posted yesterday. Marion Calmer, I believe. Sorry if I mispronounced your name, sir. Long-time no-tiller. And if you read this study, it's really, really fascinating. He had been broadcasting P&K. He eventually did a test where he broke it down into 1-inch samples, finding out that almost all of his P&K was still in the top 1 or 2 inches of soil, which is what we would expect to the surface applied P&K based on a lot of other studies as well. But it was really cool to see him do this kind of in field and see what happened. So then he ended up doing some moldboard plowing, and maybe some, I forget what the other one was, if he did some vertical tillage or strip tillage. And then I think he did some moldboard plowing and showed the results. This created a lot of interest in the no-till world because this gentleman has been no-tilling for a very long time and is very well respected. But one of the things that continued to come up was, are you using cover crops between your cash crops to help reduce that nutrient stratification? And the answer was no. And he admitted that he certainly should be, so that he didn't have to go back to tilling. So this is not pro-tilling, but it is pro-understanding of how nutrients are going to move or not move throughout your soil profile. And that's why managing fertility is so critical. So again, here's another study. I know the picture is not the greatest, but you get the idea. Is it shows before, if we're just broadcasting our potassium on. Now, there's going to be variability on soil type, CEC, etc. But in general, let's just use this for talking purposes. You had most of your potassium sitting in the first top 2 inches of soil. After a moldboard plow, which if you're not familiar with moldboard plow, it's going to really turn over that soil at a pretty good depth. As you can see here, you had a better distribution of nutrients. So the goal here is, well, how can we achieve this type of distribution in the soil profile without having to go through heavy usage of steel? Here's a further example of phosphorus. Again, another typical nutrient that's discussed. If you're just broadcasting it on there, and the roots are not going to have access to it because it's sitting on top and the roots are below ground. So what do you see here? You see 1 to 2 inches. So maybe it moved a little bit, but clearly you're not getting sound distribution throughout the entire root zone, this is assuming 8 inches. Obviously, we know we can get a lot more than that. So again, how can we get this to be more universal or more homogeneous throughout that entire root zone? So this is an interesting study that had actually looked at things all the way back from 1999 to 2019, shows climate differences, et cetera. But one of the things that they found is that summertime grazing or active growing grazing didn't move nutrients as well as cool season grazing, which actually kind of makes sense in the sense that you would think that plants that are actively growing are pulling up a lot of the nutrients from the soil and putting them into the above ground biomass, whereas a lot of nutrients that are going into your cool season or dormant stages are going to be putting energy back down into the root system. So you have a little bit more diversity in root flow and also more so nutrient movement. And this was specifically around grazing of those. So you had your growing season grazing versus your, they call it non-growing season, so more of your dormant season grazing. This is why I think it's important. I want whitetails to be grazing all the time, but I do think it's important to have nutrients like we have in the, crops like we have in the Vitalized 1-2 system, like Sudan grass and sorghum, and things like that are not going to be heavily browsed on, and they're going to be able to put down that root, not only in the dormant season, when we plant our fall carbon load, there's tons of good dormant season plants that are going to take care of this and help nutrient distribution throughout the soil profile with tubers and deep root structures, etc. But also during the growing season, you don't want your, if you just have soybeans or something that ate to the ground, you're not going to get that soil nutrient distribution because you're just not sequestering some from down low. You're not putting anything back from up top. So that's really the goal, as to how can we reduce that big stratification layer if we want to get away from tillage and we want to get away from just broadcasting fertilizer on there. One is understanding how nutrients are going to move through the soil. So don't just go out there and broadcast triple 13 and we'll hope in a prayer that it does something. We came up with our seed feed product that has P and K in it. You put it right on the seed. That way, when that seed germinates, it gives it that little bit of boost to get a good root structure. And that's why you see such good results with such a little bit of product, just a little bit on a seed, yet we're seeing great results from it. We also have foliar products that can be applied in a root soak and or on a foliar application that are going to have those nutrients in there that are going to help stimulate biology to get things moving. So how can we help to get, instead of having all your P and K at top? Well, one is using cover crops and using diverse root systems to where you're going to be scavenging some nutrients and then also bringing that up to the top, dying. Those root systems are going to die, and they have big, deep root systems, right? Those root systems are going to die off on that next planting and now leaving pockets of phosphorus. On top of that, when you start stimulating biology and you start getting more worms, those worms are going to come up and they're going to grab some of that dead root and they're going to eat it and they're going to go down a little bit and they're going to poop it out. Now you have this movement of phosphorus, just for talking purposes, and potassium that's now down in the root zone that was not sitting on top, right? The worms are going to go up. They're going to grab some of that thatch. They're going to take it. They're going to bite into it. They're going to chew it. They're going to go back down into their tunnel. Again, the system continues through biology, naturally moving those nutrients through the soil profile. So every situation is different, but I thought that you all would maybe find this interesting as far as nutrient stratification goes. What does it even mean? And how can we impact our soils in a better way? And also, how can we help our pocketbook, right? Because if we're just going out there on a hope, wish, and a prayer throwing out phosphorus, there's so much science out there that you're probably not going to get your best bang for your buck. So if you're a full-scale farmer, you're probably looking to put it in furrow, right in that root zone. If you're a food plotter or a gardener or something, maybe we need to look at some other ways to get that phosphorus uptaken. It can be anywhere from a mycorrhizal fungi inoculant to help stimulate some of that phosphorus solubilizing bacteria in fungi, all the way up to, like I said, using diverse cover crop systems. Hopefully you guys find this interesting. If you do, please follow along, share, subscribe, and check us out at vitalizeseed.com. I hope you all have a great day.